All right, so let's take a look at this lesson. So it first starts off with just some definitions. And I'm not necessarily looking at definitions in the future. Like, I'm never going to ask you, like, to identify the coefficient of something. But I am going to use that vocabulary when we talk about things. And then as you guys progress through other classes, they're going to make an assumption you know these terms. So it's important that you get familiar with them. Not like I'm going to test you on them, but that it becomes just like your common language when you talk about something. So the coefficient is always the number in front. The base is always the variable, which is x. And then your exponent is obviously the power. So when I look at identifying coefficients, variables, and exponents, that would be 8c and a squared, 9x into the first power, 1 because there's nothing in front of my y, and then to the 8th power. My coefficient is the number in front, which is 12. My two variables are a and b, and my exponents are 2 and 3. And in this section, all we're doing is we're like maybe using it a little bit of a distributive property, and we're combining like terms. So when we combine like terms, they have to be the same thing, like apples and apples. So we add the total number of apples together, total amount of oranges together, and we put them together in one little like expression. And simplified form is when you have no like terms that are left over. Okay, so when I look here, I have a 7x and a 3x, and that gives me a 4x. And then there's no other number terms by themselves, so that's just a 5. Here I have a 2x squared and a negative 3x squared, which gives me a negative x squared. And a negative 3x and a 4x gives me a positive x. And then a 7 and a negative 10 gives me a negative 3. And then I have my distributive property here. So I'm going to distribute. And then I don't have to really combine like terms in this. So I just have an 18y squared plus 6y minus 48. Okay. And then here I'll distribute. So I get a 6x plus 9y. And then I get my distributing of negative 2. So negative 8x plus 2y. And then what ends up happening is that I combine my like terms, so I get a negative 2x plus 11y. And so I have to combine like terms after I've already done my distribution. Okay. And then we do have our check for understanding. And it's actually in the right spot this time. So my 2w squareds gives me a 14w squared. And then a negative 15w and 11w give me a negative 4w. Okay. And with these checks for understanding, you should like pause the video for a second. You should take a look to see if you can do it on your own, and then unpause the video and make sure that you did it correctly. So now I look here and I get a total of 14a squared b and then a minus 12ab squared. Again, distribute, so I get a 10x minus 15y, a 16x squared minus 4y, so I get a 16x squared because there's no other x squareds. I have a 10x because there's no other x's, and then I have a negative 19y. All right, and that's it for this lesson.